In the previous video, we have prepared our scripts, so specifically the structure manager, so it can return to us all structure models and their positions so that we can properly save them into a file. But before we can do that, in the underscore scripts folder, in the test spawner, we have created this vector3 serialization and save data serializable object that can store the data from our game. Now we need to create something similar for our simple city builder. Now since we have this vector3 serialization, maybe we can move it out of the test spawner into a, for example, serialization helper class, which will contain all the helpers that we will use to save the game data for our simple city builder. So let's double tap on the test spawner class. Okay. I'm going to slide down and I'm going to extract this vector3 serialization into a separate class. So let's select all the code for the vector3 serialization. Let's cut it out, Ctrl X. Let's save it. We are going to go back to Unity. Great. We have the error that our test spawner can't run right now. We are going to, in underscore scripts folder, right click, create a new C# script, and let's call it serialization helpers. Okay, and let's open this script up in Visual Studio. I'm going to simply override this class name and paste here our vector3 serialization class. We have no using system, so Alt Enter on the serializable and say using system, so it will be added at the top of our class. And now we have our vector3 serialization helper class. Now this can help us to save the vector3 position for our structures. But as you might recall, we will need to save also the cell type, which is the enum, and the integer value for the building prefab index. So what we are going to do is we are going to create another serializable class that will store the data for a specific structure in our game. To do that, let's start by creating a serializable attribute using the square brackets, and let's type public class, and let's call it building data serialization. Okay, and in this class, what we will want to save is a public vector3 serialization, and this will be our position. We will also need to have public int building prefab index, and at the end we will need to have public cell type building type. Now the JSON serialization can easily serialize the enums and basic primitive types, but for the vector3 we had to create this vector3 serialization class that saves the basic parameters, so the primitive types of float instead of a vector3. So now, since this is a class, we can right click here, pick actions, and we can select generate constructor, and we are going to select all those parameters. Now, since we are not going to get the vector3 serialization, what we can get is vector3 int, since we are saving the position of our buildings in a vector3 int format, and we are going to call it position. And for the position, we are going to simply create a new vector3 serialization, and we are going to pass the position, since we can downcast the vector3 int to the vector3, since we are converting basically int to a float value. So this will store the data for the roads, for the structures of type house, special structure, and big structure. But again, we do not have only one structure, but we have a list of structures that we will have to recreate. So now we have to create a new class that will store a list of our structure data. So let's create a serializable attribute, and again, public class, and let's call it save data serialization. Okay, and here we will be able to store our public list of type building data serialization, and let's call it structures data equals new, and let's call it list of buildings. Great. And now what we will need to do is we will need to have a way to add a structure to the data. So let's type public void add structure data. And we are going to pass here the same parameters as we have passed our building data serialization. So we are going to pass the position, the building index, and the cell type. And all we will need to do here is open this method and call our structures data dot add, and we are going to add the position, the new building data serialization, and now we can type the position, now we can type the building prefab index, and now we can pass the building type. And this is how we have created our save data serialization object. In the next video, we are going to go to our game manager, and we are going to implement the save game and load game functionality and use our save system that we have created previously to allow us to save the data to our files. So see you in the next video.